Do you have college credits or an associate's degree? At Rasmussen College, we think that experience should count toward your bachelor's program. That's why we made transferring credits simple and even offer some courses that let you finish faster if you already know the material. The result? You can enroll in one of 9 accelerated business programs for under $8,500 a year. Learn how the experience you already have can take you further at rasmussen.edu. Price reflects total full-time cost, including fees. See rasmussen.edu/tuition for complete cost details.
What AFC West tight end is being supremely undervalued in FFPC drafts? What AFC North running back has his quarterback raving about him? And how about we play a Would You Rather with Jarvis Landry, plus former Football Guys Players Championship and Main Event League champ, as well as 2017 Pros vs. Joe's FFPC Joe, Jeff Howle, co-host with me before Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Commissioner Farrell Elliott joins me to answer some emails and talk about some of the news going around the NFL. We've got a great show for you. Jeff Howle and Farrell Elliott are here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your extra special Eric Balkman Show edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hours.
Live from the WRST radio studios in beautiful Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and heard around the world on the WRST stream. It's the Eric Balkman Show.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all of you Balkaholics. Welcome to the latest episode of the Eric Balkman Show edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com, right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host, the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak, is off tonight. I have 2 extra special co-hosts for you for a 2-hour show. Jeff Howle, who is a former league champ in both the FPC and the main event in the FFPC, will drop in to talk about his Pros versus Joe's team this season. And then, of course, our good friend Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, will give us the latest goings-on of the KFFSC, both how you can register for live or online action in both Cincinnati, Kentucky, or wherever you are. That'll be up in the second hour of the program. Coming up in tonight's show overall, what does 2017 hold in store for John Brown? What is truly going on with the Chargers wide receiver core? And what rookie would you rather have this season between Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey? Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there if you want to connect with us on Twitter. The show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman, and of course Farrell is on Twitter at KFFSC. You can post on our Facebook page, Facebook.com/High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour. I'm still referring to the Facebook page that for some reason got banned by Facebook because it was too racy or vulgar or what have you. But it is Facebook.com/HSFF Hour. If you want to give us a call tonight, feel free to do so. 347-426-3682. That's 347 Game Over. And you can also email the show at the inbox, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you do have any questions for us, our mutual friend and producer and our audio engineer, Rob and Bryce, respectively, will be getting those questions to us later on in the fantasy feedback, later on in the show. I am going to bring on our next guest, Jeff Howle, right on the other side of the break. I'm Eric Balkman. It's going to be a great 2 hours. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I'm Eric Balkman, not flying solo tonight because I do have a fantastic a couple of co-hosts lined up for you. And I want to bring our first one in here on the HSFF Hour here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I'll bring in the first one right now. It's going to be a delight to talk to him. He's a former league champion in both the Football Guys Players Championship and the FFPC main event. You can actually watch him draft live in the Los Pollos Hermanos division of the 2017 FFPC Pros vs. Joes competition from the 3 spot right here on these airwaves on July 30th. We'll also have video up at youtube.com/highstakesfantasyfootball. So you can watch the draft board, you can listen to us, and you can watch this guy wow us. Please welcome into the show Jeff Howle. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, man.
Greetings from South Carolina, Balky. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, the pride of South Carolina joining the program tonight. Are you a big Gamecocks fan?
Not at all. I graduated from Chapel Hill, so I went to the other Carolina.
I gotcha. So I was going to ask you a question about Alshon Jeffrey, but maybe I should ask if Ryan Switzer has any potential redraft value right away in 2017.
You can ask me both. I'm a huge Eagles fan. So, yeah, Switzer, he's talented. Trubisky, we had a few talented receivers in Chapel Hill last year between Bug Howard and Switzer and Mac Hollins, who's also an Eagle.
I got to tell you, it's weird because I live in Northeast Wisconsin, but, I mean, essentially for the last, 20-plus years, I've been a huge Florida State fan. And that Florida State-North Carolina game last year is just a gut punch, but what a big win it was for Carolina.
We needed that. We had lost all the big games to Florida State back in the Mac Brown era when we were trying to make the next step to be a big-time program. So it was nice to get one back from them.
Well, that's fantastic. I promised the listeners we will get into pro football. As a reminder, I just want to let everybody know, if you have not got your main event team paid for with the FFPC, remember that early draft slot deadline is Monday, so make sure you have your team paid in full by then so you can get your draft slot the following weekend, which is the final weekend of July, and you'll know where you're drafting a month in advance of when you're going to be drafting your main event team. So definitely go to myffpc.com, get your discounted rooms taken care of. We have Football Guys Players Championship drafts going on all weekend, including some Dynasty startups that are drafting this weekend. We have more Dynasty startups throughout the summer. Best balls, classics, super flexes, and double ups, all at myffpc.com. So I invite you to check that out after you listen to the show, because I have a feeling it's going to be a good one. Jeff, let's get back to you. Tell us what you're not when you're not playing fantasy football in South Carolina. What are you doing for a living?
I'm a sales manager for an insurance agency, health insurance, life insurance. So the only thing more uncertain than the Baltimore Ravens tight end situation is the future of health insurance. So unpredictability all around my life right now.
So you as a high stakes player, you don't even have a good handle on the Ravens tight ends right now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. Not even Harbaugh or anybody up there. Flacco is just basically going to be throwing to whatever warm body is standing upright at this point.
That's right. Most likely Danny Woodhead, if I have anything to say about it. That's right.
We were emailing about this before the show. I am of the opinion that Danny Woodhead, no matter how good he does every single year, no matter what numbers he puts up, no matter where he finishes among running backs, he will always be chronically undervalued in FFPC drafts. And honestly, it's not any different with a new team this year. He's going at the 703 right now in drafts. It's insane how many running backs are being taken in front of him and what running backs there are. I'm a huge fan of his in the early 7th round, and I got to believe that at that price, you're going to be drafting him quite a bit this year too.
I'm all over him at that price. As a matter of fact, I predict that he's going to be a top 5 running back in PPR this year. I mean, there are so many targets up for grabs there. The Ravens lost Pitta. They lost Steve Smith, lost Usac. I mean, all these targets close to the line of scrimmage, Danny Woodhead's going to gobble them up. And he's not just a pass-catching back, which is kind of his claim to fame, but he's also a red zone threat. He scored 8 touchdowns and 9 touchdowns respectively his last 2 healthy seasons with the Chargers. So he's going to tear it up in Los Angeles this year with the Chargers, and I do think he'll be a top 5 running back. So if someone's in a draft with me, they better get him before the 7th round, because I'm going to definitely scoop him up.
Yeah, and it's, you listen to this oh, man, this guy thinks Danny Woodhead's going to be a top 5 running back. That's insane. Well, remember, it wasn't that long ago that he was the number 2 overall running back. That's how he finished in the year. So he's done this before. I remember I actually owned him in one of my dynasty leagues, and it was so much fun, his final healthy year on the Chargers. because not only was he, just getting those dump-off passes, but there was one game I remember he had like 2 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. I mean, it was insane, the numbers that he was putting up. Baltimore goes out and pays him this year. You can get him in the 7th round. I'm on board with that. We're actually going to talk more about Danny Woodhead with Farrell Elliott in the second hour of the show. But listen, you and I are of one mind on that. I want to check pick your brain on this. First of all, I want to congratulate you on both winning a main event league in the FFPC and a Football Guys Players Championship league title as well. How much tougher, Jeff, when you compare the main event to the Football Guys Players Championship, how much tougher was the main event to win in comparison to that mid-stakes title?
It was definitely a step up in competition. So the way I plan my drafts, I'm very meticulous. If one draft strategy is best available player, then I'm the exact opposite end of that strategy. I plan out my drafts very carefully. And with FPC drafts, I usually can go with my plan A and maybe fall back to a plan B depending on how the draft's going. But in the main event last year, I was all the way down to my plan D because they give you no quarter there. If your team gets out of balance too much, it's going to be tough for you to recover, and you can get on the wrong side of a run. So it's great competition in both, but I definitely think the main event is a step up. And it's a lot of fun doing it live. That's the only way I would do it, is just a lot of fun in Vegas.
Yeah, it's definitely. I always have a lot more fun drafting live than I do, online. I mean, drafting is always fun no matter what, but drafting live with the other 11 owners at the table with you is always so much more fun. I want to ask you, just to follow up on that, when you talk about, because so many people will come on this show, like 90% of the people will come on the show and say, when it comes down to it, I'm taking best player available, best player available. It seems to me that you're a little bit more rigid and less flexible as far as what you want to do in each round depending upon who's there. When you say you plan out your draft, are you saying, okay, I want to have this many running backs at this point, I want to have this many receivers at this point, or are you specifically looking at 2 guys or 3 guys in each round that you're trying to get that? How do you plan that out before the draft begins?
I definitely do a lot of work on the draft as to who I would want at each round. And then, of course, the draft will happen, and, like anything, plans are so good until you get punched in the face. But, I definitely have alternate plans, too. So I have my first plan. I say, okay, say if I pick, like, Pros versus Joes, I pick number 3. That's easy enough. This is the guy I want to take. And coming back around, if these few guys are available, this is my favorite guy in that spot. And if they're both wide receivers, then coming around in round 3, I'm looking there to get a little balance, maybe get the best running back available, unless a great wide receiver or tight end falls to me there. So that would be my plan B. But after 8 rounds, I would love to have a balance of 3-3-2, meaning 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends in the FFPC format, if possible. But like I said, last year in the main event, I went into it with that strategy, and great players kept falling to me that were not tight ends. And so my plan D, break glass in case of emergency, was get Dennis Pitta late. And that just happened to work out for me last year.
Yeah, big time. 86 catches for Dennis Pitta. Anybody who drafted him got a great deal on him. So that is a fantastic value that it worked out for you on that. Of course, we're talking with Jeff Howle, a former FFPC main event league title winner and a FPC league title winner as well. Let's talk about a specific player that's been pretty polarizing in drafts so far, and it's really a polarizing situation when you talk about the Patriots' backfield. But over the last 2 weeks in the Football Guys Players Championship, the number 1 drafted New England running back, maybe to no surprise, is Mike Gillislee. He's currently going at the 608. Now, if you look at a running back in the mid-6th round, is Gillislee a guy that you'd be looking to acquire at that price?
The 6th round is too steep a price for me to pay for a New England running back. I just don't want to – I don't like playing the game of let's read Bill Belichick's mind from game to game as to which running back will be featured. I know Gillislee's talented. I know he's a monster in the red zone. But, I remember when Rex Burkhead joined the Patriots, every fantasy analyst I was listening to was telling me what a great fit Rex Burkhead was for the Patriots. Well, he's still there. He hasn't gone anywhere. And so he's still a great fit for the Patriots. And they still have James White, who should have been co-MVP of the Super Bowl, and all the catches that he provided last year. And Dion Lewis is still there. Now, some of that may shake out before they cut down to 53. But sitting here in July or even drafting probably in the main event, I'm not going to pay a 6th-round price for a New England running back.
Just won't do it, and we can't do it, at least anymore on this side of the break. We do have to take our next break in the program. A lot of great stuff so far. More to come with Jeff Howle, former FFPC main event and Football Guys Players Championship League title winner. I'm Eric Balkman, and this is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and you're listening to the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Eric Balkman coming at you tonight or during the day, what have you. I can't remember if I brought this up on the show the last couple of weeks, but our time slot has once again changed. If you are listening to us on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network, there's 3 different times you'll have to listen to us over the weekend. Now, the final 2 haven't been announced, but we will be live at 3, 2 Central, Saturday afternoons. You can catch the replay of this show. And I also believe Sunday nights and then like Saturday, Sunday overnight. So for any of you who are, out on the road or whatever, we'll be on in the middle of the night. And, of course, we'll be syndicated across radio stations in North America as well. So that's very exciting, but not as exciting as talking to Jeff Howle, which we are doing tonight as he sits in the co-host chair for Dave Gerzak. Of course, a Football Guys Players Championship league title winner, main event league title winner. We talked about Mike Gillislee before the break, and he's certainly a running back that a lot of people are paying attention to in the 6th round. Now, I think an interesting situation, really in general, is the Chargers' passing offense. But specifically, when you look at the tight ends there, Jeff, Antonio Gates last year, 18 red zone targets. Hunter Henry had 16 red zone targets in his rookie season. Gates was ranked 2nd at tight end in that stat. Hunter Henry right behind him in 3rd place. Knowing how the Chargers were actually trying to get the touchdown record to Antonio Gates last year, which they said they're not going to be doing, I mean, depending upon who you believe, but, fairly reliable sources said that they're not going to try to do that this year. So you got to believe that Hunter Henry's going to get more of those. And knowing that Mike Williams, who was drafted very early, could potentially miss the entire season, for sure is going to be missing some time here in the summer, so he'll be behind the 8 ball. Do you think, Jeff, that Hunter Henry is actually being underdrafted going at the 703 position in FFPC drafts right now?
I do. You look at the efficiency from last year. Hunter Henry averaged 9 yards per attempt. Gates only 5.9 yards. I think this will be the year that, they get Gates the record. He's 1 touchdown away from setting the record to break Tony Gonzalez's record of 111 touchdowns by a tight end. I see him getting that on Monday Night Football in week 1, and then, giving Antonio Gates a laurel and a hearty handshake and turning the keys of the tight end car over to Hunter Henry. He's a huge value in the 7th round. He has top 5 tight end upside, and I would certainly look to take him 6th round, maybe even in the 5th round. He's a huge value there.
Yeah, it's just insane to me that a guy, tight ends always typically struggle their rookie seasons with a few exceptions, and we talked about that a lot on this show. And you look at what Hunter Henry did as a rookie when the team was actually trying to get the stats to go to Antonio Gates in the red zone. I think the sky's the limit for him. And if you're looking for a guy, if you're of the belief that you need to take these high upside guys to try to win these national contests like the main event or the FPC, Hunter Henry's a perfect example of a guy who might have a top 5, like you said, tight end season. Jeff, I'm totally with you there, and I think that his ADP will actually move up. But I don't know how much. I figure it's probably done the bulk of moving up right now. I don't know how much more it's going to go. I do believe that it will happen. Let's talk about pros versus Joes, because this is coming up on the big part of the season for us here at the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. We kick these off Sunday night. You can actually listen at 8, 7 Central. Sunday night and I'll talk more about this later on in the program, but we kick our pros versus Joes competition off. 6 pros, 6 Joes. It's 6 drafts, so essentially 72 pros, 72 Joes, all competing for 6 free FFPC main event teams in 2018. Very exciting stuff, very heavy competition, and I'm curious to ask you this, Jeff, because you're going against 5 other FFPC Joes that, who knows, you may have already drafted with these guys or against these guys in previous leagues, and then 6 pros who maybe not necessarily have played in FFPC leagues or FFPC formats before, but they play and write and talk about fantasy football for their livelihood. Which side do you think has the advantage in this format? The Joes who have the experience of the FFPC, or the pros that are sort of immersed in all things fantasy football?
That's an interesting question. I have a lot of respect for all of the pros who are in my league, and driving around the state as I do my job, I listen to all their podcasts, and I feel very lucky to be in the pros versus Joes playing against them, as well as the other Joes in the league. But, all the hard work they put in, and a lot of these pros have forgotten more about fantasy football than I know. So they definitely have a huge advantage in the knowledge department. And so it's up to us Joes to make it up in game strategy, with the FFPC format that we are familiar with. But it's probably not enough to tip the difference to the Joe side. So we're going to probably need a little bit of luck to come out on top against these pros.
I always thought it was interesting that, for however many years we've been doing, I don't even know how many years we've been doing this, and I think this is the 9th year of Pros versus Joes, and for like the first, I want to say 6 years, an FFPC Joe won the overall title, and I wish I knew what the split was for people, winning the actual individual leagues. I don't know what that is. But you have a Joe winning it the first, 6 years, then the pros come in and win years 7 and 8, and then Blake Pyle comes back and brings it back to the Joe side in year 9. And in the story, I always think, listen, if you listen to the Pros versus Joes drafts coming up, you're going to hear me bring this up a lot, but Tim McCulloch was the first pro to win it, and he won it drafting one tight end, Antonio Gates, in a 28-round best ball format, and he survived all year with that. So it is crazy how, some teams can botch the draft but still hit on enough other talent, and the rest of the drafting chops paid off, and they end up winning the whole thing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys all listen and watch the draft boards, because we always have a blast doing it every single year. Jeff, let's get back to some player analysis here, and I want to specifically talk about John Brown, the receiver for Arizona. Do you see him, because he's another guy that I'm reading about a lot more people talking about him having a bounce-back year, a year that is much more similar to his 2015 rather than his injury-riddled 2016 where he's dealing with the sickle cell. He had some other issues. He had a cyst, I believe, removed off his spine in the offseason, so he was dealing with that. Going at the 10.03 in football guys drafts right now, is that a value? Is he a guy that you'd be looking to add to your squad right after the turn of the 9-10 rounds?
As an Eagles fan, it's hard for me to get the image of John Brown streaking up the middle for 80 yards to beat us in 2014. I mean, he has that breakaway, game-changing speed, but there's a lot of issues with Brown this year. Well, of course, his health issues, even though they say they got them all figured out, is still a concern. An aging Carson Palmer, they say they figured out his dead arm problem. That's a concern. There's also a J.J. Nelson problem. I mean, J.J. Nelson could be the one that has the breakout year instead of John Brown. So in the 10th round, there's a lot of other players I like there. Tyrell Williams, Adam Thielen, or even a running back such as C.J. Prosise. So I'm going to let John Brown go by me there. Now, if he drops down to the 12th round, I would take a look at him there. And certainly in a best ball league, if you can stack him with J.J. Nelson, that could also be a very good play there.
One of the things two of the things that kind of stood out to me because I agree with you on this Palmer thing that they're talking about. Oh, he was overworked. His arm was overworked last year. We got a handle on that now, and we got a handle on John Brown's injuries. How do you get a handle on the sickle cell thing? Like, number one, how do you know that you have a handle on it? Number two, why did it take an entire off season to figure this out? So either there's something that doesn't sit right there. It shouldn't take months at a time to figure out how to manage this, or they're just blatantly lying to us and trying to pump up Brown's value. And then Palmer, too. I mean, it's pretty clear that the guy was considering retirement he shouldn't have been working that hard or working his arm that hard in the season last year. Give him a few more days off, manage his reps a little bit more. So I don't know. It's just, for those things to come out now, on the outside, it seems like, oh, yeah, they really, have made some good changes here, and it should be good for everyone. But at the same time, I feel like these are things that should have been taken care of last year, and they weren't. So tread lightly with John Brown. Getting back to your pros versus Joe's draft here, Jeff, and we're talking with Jeff Howle, the FPC former league title winner there, league title winner in the FFPC main event as well. You will actually be competing in the pros versus Joe's draft on July 30th. Is there any certain strategy that you plan on deploying in a 28-round best?
My strategy will always be balance.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff. Talk about your strategy in that.
Oh, always balance with me. I'm always looking for balance, and I'm always looking to draft reliable players with upside. And so that's not going to change. And so I'm not going to try to stretch or do anything different than what I always do with the pros being in the draft. Try not to get psyched out. Just stay with the game plan.
Do you have, because I know you talked about earlier, sort of a rubric that you follow of, wanting to have 3 backs, 3 receivers, and 2 tight ends after round 8. Do you have something like that as well in this format? Is it the same in this format? Or are you, just being, flexible as far as who's there when you consider that this is a set it and forget it best ball league?
The only thing I do different in Draft Masters format is I'll do more stacking. So, for example, like I was talking about, if I can get John Brown at a good price, stacking with J.J. Nelson, or a Tyler Lockett with a Paul Richardson, a Tyrell Williams with a Dontrell Inman or a Travis Benjamin, these upside wide receivers who you don't have to pay a high price for, stack them together. Or, running backs later, maybe a Jalen Richard with DeAndre Washington. But that's about the only difference in strategy. Otherwise, it's very similar to a redraft draft for me.
I know that it'll be fun seeing you draft your team. I always like getting these pros versus Joe's drafters on the show prior to their draft, and then seeing how their strategy actually plays out when we actually cover the draft live, especially going against 6 pros who God knows what they're capable of when they get into this type of format. We have much more with Jeff Howle coming up right after this. We do have to take a break. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I'm Eric Balkman, and this is the HSFF Hour. You are listening to the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. No Dave Gerzak this week, but I do have Jeff Howle, a former Football Guys Players Championship League title winner, as well as a main event title winner. Sort of like winning not a national championship, Jeff, but it's sort of like winning a conference championship in college football and then winning a conference championship in pro football as well. You have both of those under your belt.
That's right. Something my Tar Heels and Eagles have never done. So
that's right. I should have. What's interesting? As long as we bring up the Eagles, a guy I've been struggling with as far as how to evaluate him and how I feel about him as far as drafting him in 2017 is Jordan Matthews. The Eagles have Carson Wentz getting. Having already his rookie season under his belt, so you'd like to think the offense opens up a little bit more. And then they bring in Alshon Jeffrey, and they bring in Torrey Smith. What's your opinion on how Matthews' outlook is going to be? What are you hearing now that he's primarily going to be in the slot again, where he had most of his success in the NFL?
I love Matthews this year. I think he's being undervalued. And so, right now his ADP is around the 11th round, and that's great value. So, that's another receiver I would take over John Brown the 10th. Add him to the list. I think looking at the Eagles' schedule, Alshon Jeffrey is going to have some really tough matchups on the outside. And I just think that Jordan Matthews is going to thrive in the slot. Carson Wentz and Jordan have a great chemistry. And for redraft leagues, he's great, and for dynasty, he's very good. Considering that Alshon's on a 1-year contract, who knows if he'll be here after this year? And I think Jordan Matthews is going to thrive and get back on track.
All right, I am officially on Team Jordan Matthews this year. Officially. I was saying, and again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but you never know who's listened to what show and how much they've listened to. But I said there's a sweet spot in the 9th to 11th rounds, really, in FFPC drafts this year where there is a lot of great receiver value. Jordan Matthews is part of that. I mean, he's right in there. You can go heavy running backs early. You can go heavy tight ends early if you want to do that. And you can actually you only got to start 2 of these receivers, people, and you can fill in the cracks with these guys like Jeremy Maclin and Cameron Meredith and Eric Decker and all these guys that have this upside represented in the 9th through 11th rounds. You can get them there and plug them in. And I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams that employ that strategy this year, getting those types of players there and have a lot of success with it. I talked about loading up on tight ends early. A guy who is a tight end, but he is not going early, but I feel like he should be going earlier than he is Austin Hooper. He's been pumped up by all these fantasy outlets, Jeff, podcasting and articles, pumping up Austin Hooper as a breakout tight end candidate this year in that high-powered Atlanta offense. He is going currently right at the end of the 11th round, at the 11th pick of the 11th round. How do you view Austin Hooper as a potential breakout guy that you're not really paying so much for when he's going that late?
I do believe he takes a leap forward this year. I mean, last year was a down year in general for tight ends, and I see, the Hunter Henrys, the Eric Ebrons, and the Austin Hoopers taking a kind of a young tight end resurgence this year. And Austin Hooper could certainly be a tight end 1 this year in this Atlanta offense. Of concern is that the Falcons only targeted the tight end on 14% of attempts last year, well below the league average of 20%. But that's also a lot of room for growth. I saw the latest Roto World blurb on Hooper was that Matt Ryan and Austin Hooper worked together, this summer, and Matt Ryan expects Hooper to be a big part of the offense this year. I usually draft on actions of teams, not these words, so we'll see. I think he's priced about right in the 11th round, though, towards the end of the 11th round. So you look at the tight ends who are going above him, there aren't too many that would draft Hooper above there. So I think he's priced right currently.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, and I'm with you, draft on actions. Don't draft on coach speak. Don't draft on preseason puff pieces. Don't draft on any of that. Draft with what you're seeing on the field. Draft, based on the results. And we haven't seen those results for Hooper yet. And I think that's what it is. And that's why his value is being depressed into the 11th round. I feel like if he does have a couple of preseason week 2, preseason week 3, he looks really good. Yeah, then you're looking at him moving up in a tight end premium format like the FFPC. But right now, you're not sinking a whole lot into him there. To me, he makes the perfect backup tight end. Upside, he can fill in for you. I really like him in the 11th round there as we move forward in draft season. Will be interesting to see where he goes in the Pros versus Joes leagues coming up this weekend. This weekend. Let's get to some emails here for you, Jeff. First is from Dan in Pump Station 6, Alaska. Apparently there's about at least 6 pump stations in Alaska. He's at Pump Station 6. He writes, noticed you are drafting number 3 in your Pros versus Joes division, assuming Johnson Bell go 1-2. What are your thoughts on who you're taking at 3? Yo, Joe, that is Dan in Pump Station 6, Alaska. So, Jeff, this has been an interesting story to follow over the last couple of weeks with Ezekiel Elliott being the slam dunk number 3 according to FFPC ADP. He's actually slipped a little bit behind Antonio Brown going at the 4, but I've seen him slip as late as 8 in the first round in Football Guys drafts. What are you thinking that you're going to be doing, assuming Bell and Johnson are gone? What are you doing with that 3rd pick?
Yeah, speaking of action, the Cowboys brought in Ronnie Hillman and Denard Robinson for workouts today, so I think they see a suspension coming. I mean, worst case scenario, if the disciplinary committee, finds that he committed domestic violence in that 2016 incident, then it's an automatic 6-game suspension, no questions asked. So, I'm not taking Zeke with the 3rd pick, but I hadn't planned on taking him there anyway. When I got my draw at 3, I knew exactly what I was going to take, unless David Johnson or Lev Bell fall to me at 3, I'm taking Julio Jones at 3. I just, everything I've studied and looked at, I think Julio's just going to have a monster season this year. He's 28, he's in his prime. They're opening up that new dome in Atlanta. It's going to be a big deal, and he's got the MVP quarterback throwing to him. They have a much easier schedule this year than even last year when they blew it up. They're going from the 8th hardest pass defense in 2016 to now the 28th most difficult pass defense in 2017. They're in a high-scoring division with some weak secondaries, New Orleans, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. So Julio Jones is my guy there, unless one or two, steals him from me. That's going to be my pick.
Knowing that only in Pros vs. Joe's, only the first place team will win the main event title. Nobody else will get anything. So it's literally winner take all. Does the fact that Julio Jones have this, injury history behind him, does that factor into, okay, I know he could get hurt. He has been hurt. He's played hurt before. Does that factor into I'm going big or going home here, taking the guy with the biggest upside over Beckham, over Brown, over Mike Evans, over all those guys at 3? How much of that factors into this?
The way I look at injuries is I'll take a look and see if they're currently hurt. And if they currently hurt or currently have problems, for example, Mike Williams with the back problem, then I will certainly discount them heavily. But otherwise, I just treat them as their full go, 100%. And so for Julio, for Gronkowski, you name it, Jordan Reed, I treat them all as they're 100%, and I'm going to draft them, at their ceiling, and the ceiling for Julio Jones is, the number one player in fantasy football and certainly number one wide receiver in fantasy football. And, I don't mind going down with the ship with my guys, and he's definitely one of my guys. So
going and getting your guys, always an important part of fantasy success. I'll put you on the spot here, or at least Chuck from Mountain View, Colorado is going to put you on the spot here, Jeff. Which guy are you more likely to draft this year, Frank Gore or Paul Perkins? Both these guys are going in the same round in football guys drafts right now, both in the 7th round, but really opposite ends of their careers. Frank Gore is, a million years old, and Paul Perkins, his second year in the league. So which guy are you more likely to draft this year?
Good old steady old Frank Gore for me. He's I will take him, if I go wide receivers early and get some of those, high upside wide receivers, and Frank Gore is that perfect balance that, that I like to have on my team. So I'm not sure who the running back in New York is, would be to have with the Giants, other than possibly Shane Vereen. Shane Vereen's my favorite Giants running back because I know he has a role there with his pass catching ability. But Wayne Gallman, Orleans Darkwa, Paul Perkins, what my eyes told me about Paul Perkins last year, I just didn't see it. So he probably will not be on any of my teams this year.
We have about 90 seconds before our next break. But, Jeff, fire off a sleeper this year that's flying under the radar and a bust that you won't be touching in any drafts.
My bust is Marshawn Lynch. He won't be on any of my teams. He's going currently beginning a 3rd round. I've seen him go in the 2nd round. He's 31 years old, hasn't played football in over a year, after he retired after the 2015 season. And that was a very rough season for him with hamstring and abdomen injuries. He just had 417 yards on 111 carries. That's 3.76 yards per carry. I don't see it. He's also got 2 talented backs behind him, DeAndre Washington, Jalen Richard. So Marshawn Lynch is my bust. And I love Kenny Stills as a late round sleeper. All this talk and puff pieces about Devontae Parker, he hasn't shown it on the field. But, actions by the Miami Dolphins, they gave Kenny Stills $20 million guaranteed money, a 4-year, $32 million contract, caught 9 touchdowns last year, 726 yards. I think Adam Gase really likes him a lot, and I think he's going to be a big part of the offense. And you can get Kenny Stills in the 16th round, whereas you got to draft Devontae Parker in the 8th round. So that's a big difference, and I'll take Kenny Stills' value all day there.
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on. Jeff, we got to get up to we're up against a break, but we will talk to you again very soon. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Balky.
Jeff Howle will be right back after this on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. The HSFF Hour is live or on tape, depending upon when you're listening to it. It's always so weird, by the way. I'm Eric Balkman. When I'm coming back from these breaks and talking to a variety of listeners, I don't know when you're listening to this. I don't know if you're listening to it live. I don't know if you've downloaded on your, on your iPhone or whatever you listen to podcasts on. I don't know if you're listening to it on the radio. But when I said this, it was live. You're probably listening to it taped right now. This is such a great weekend because we kick off the Pros versus Joes in the FFPC, and we just had one of the FFPC Joes on right before this, Jeff Howle, a man who has won both the Football Guys Players Championship League title and FFPC Main Event League title. Talking about a wide variety of subjects, roster construction, being flexible versus being rigid, following up on how his strategy changes in a 28-round best ball format as opposed to a 20-round classic that he's been so successful at in the past. So a lot of great stuff there. I hope you got a chance to catch it. I didn't get a chance to comment on his bus and his sleeper this year, and I do want to do that briefly. He said he doesn't like Marshawn Lynch this year for his bust. And I got to be honest with you, it's sort of, the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Lynch didn't even play football last year. He's 31 years old. He's never caught a lot of passes. He's playing for a team, by the way, that really, really, really took a major step forward last year. And honestly, a lot of times you see these teams, these offenses, take huge steps forward. Sometimes there is a little bit of regression to the mean. So maybe Derek Carr is not going to be the MVP candidate that he was the majority of the season. Maybe Amari Cooper is not this world beater that everybody thinks he is, taking him in the second round of FFPC drafts. Maybe Michael Crabtree is closer to the Crabtree that he's been over the course of his career rather than what he did last year as well. So you look at Marshawn Lynch stepping into this situation, I think it makes a lot of sense to stay away from him. You look at where he's going in FFPC drafts right now, or in Football Guys drafts that have gone on over the last 2 weeks. He's actually creeped up to the first pick of the fourth round. This is a guy that was going in the fifth round a couple of months ago, and now he's already up in the fourth. So I don't think we're talking about an ascendant level player here that we'll be discussing when we announce that at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship coming up in August. But he is climbing boards, so I'm a little wary of him. Now, the sleeper that he mentioned that he really likes this year was Kenny Stills. And Kenny Stills is actually, you can basically, I don't want to say get him for free. He's going in the 16th round, but that's basically free. You can get him in the 14th or 15th round pretty easily, and nobody's going to, call you out for anything like that. So Kenny Stills actually makes some sense there. We're going to talk, we have Farrell Elliott coming up in the second hour here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and we're going to talk about Jarvis Landry and really that Dolphins passing game in general. But I'm a little worried that this Devontae Parker breakout might be a lot of hot air. Maybe he breaks out and maybe he's amazing. But, again, another thing that Jeff said, draft with your eyes, draft with the results. Don't draft from what you're hearing. And we've been hearing a lot of great stuff about Devontae Parker. Will we actually see it? I don't know. So I think that you have to be concerned with that. So if he doesn't take a step forward, well, there's Kenny Stills, a guy that I was sure that he was going to be paid by some other team and he would go off and be, have a significant offensive role for that team. He stays with Miami because they paid him big time. And remember, that Stills is a guy that's still on the way up. He is a very young player. I don't have his age right in front of me. Maybe the chat room could help me out, or Rob could actually get off his duff and do some research. But Kenny Stills is not an old guy or a guy that's in his prime. He has not yet hit his prime. So he is definitely an ascendant player, and it makes a lot of sense to draft guys in the 16th round where you're drafting them when their ceiling represents a much, much higher upside. So Kenny Stills actually makes a lot of sense there. So great stuff from Jeff Howle there. Of course, we'll have another full hour here for you on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I have Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, coming on shortly to answer some emails, to talk about some stuff that's been going around the NFL. It's going to be a lot of fun. It always is a lot of fun when you have Farrell on, especially when you don't have Dave Gerzak who is off this week. We do have to pause for station identification right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. You are listening to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and I am Eric Balkman. Welcome to hour number 2 of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I am Eric Balkman. Hey, give me a follow on Twitter, @EricBalkman. I promise you, you won't be disappointed all the time. This is the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. And no Dave Gerzak this week, but we had a great interview with Jeff Howle, who helped co-host the first hour of the show. Tonight, we have another great co-host coming up, a guy who's done it to some critical acclaim on this show. I don't even know how many times he's been on the show. He's co-hosted a bunch of times. But Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, is coming up as well. In case you missed what we talked about with Jeff, we got into a lot of stuff. We talked about Mike Gillislee. We talked about Austin Hooper. We talked about John Brown. I'll be honest with you. When he started talking about John Brown, I was of the opinion that he was going to praise him and say, yes, this is a guy you need to get in the 10th round. It's so easy. Grab him. And because that's kind of how I felt about him. I was kind of off John Brown. And the more I'm reading about him, there was a great article. I can't remember if it was Fantasy Pros or RotoViz. Somebody had a fantastic article on John Brown comparing his numbers to Antonio Brown's and what they were able to do in year 4 of their careers, and it was really amazing when you took the touchdowns away, how similar their numbers were. So I was all on board with John Brown. Now I'm stepping back from that a little bit. Now again, you're talking about a 10th round pick, so he's not going to cost you that much, and with each pick that you get deeper into your draft, there's less and less of a chance it's actually going to end up coming and hurting your team. So I think that's something that you need to pay attention to, that even if John Brown does bust, he's only costing you a 10th round pick. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus for busting on a 10th round pick. So interesting stuff that he had to say about John Brown there. We have the chat room live at blogtalkradio.com/HSFF if you are listening to this live. If you want to catch a live show, we have the Pros versus Joes coming up Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of this coming week at that same website. And youtube.com/highstakesfantasyfootball will have all the draft board action, so you can actually follow along pick by pick in real time while we are talking about the picks, and maybe we'll get some interviews from the Pros versus Joes, or Pros and Joes on those leagues. A lot of fun, and a main event team is at stake in each one of those. First one kicks off at 8/7 Central Sunday night. More on that later on. I'll give a shout out to the chat room right now. Jimmy Wagner, of course, in there, says that no one likes A.J. Green this year. One of a few top 10 players that ready for his time for a monster season. And I got to be honest with you. A.J. Green is a guy that seems to be drafted in the first round every year. And I feel like it was probably 3 or 4 years ago when he was going at that turn, the end of the first, second round. And I was kind of like, he's not worth it. He's not worth taking that early. And it ended up being his monster season. That was his career year. And he's been, cemented in the first round ever since then. You look at what Cincinnati has done this offseason. The offensive line has gotten worse. They did bring in John Ross. They did bring in Joe Mixon. So certainly there is some youthful, explosive playmaking on that offense that was not there last year. They still have Tyler Eifert as well. But A.J. Green is still the guy that drives that offense. Now maybe Mixon takes that role over this year. But when you're looking at the track record, there is no doubting what A.J. Green's been able to do. And you think about that defense got a little worse, which I think it did. Maybe they're in a few more shootouts this year. Maybe they're playing a little bit more catch-up football as well. We are going to be playing some catch-up high-stakes fantasy football talk right on the show tonight. This is the HSFF Hour. Farrell Elliott coming up right after this on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Eric Balkman coming at you on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Jeff Howle, a fantastic guest to kick things off in hour number 1. Let's get to an equally fantastic guest here in hour number 2. A man that needs no introduction, but he's just the best, so I'm going to give him an introduction anyway. He's a longtime NFL player agent that also represents musicians like the Quiet Hollers, Kristen Diablo, and much more. He is also the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, now in its 16th year of existence, that has expanded to other states other countries taking registrations for both online drafts and live drafts in Cincinnati and Louisville. You hear him every week on the Kentucky Fantasy Football podcast that he hosts with KFFSC player Rob Fetcher, and you know him as the unofficial third host of this show. My pleasure to once again welcome into the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Commissioner Farrell Elliott. How's Louisville tonight, my man?
Bogey, it's hot and sweaty, and we're waiting for some fantasy football to get here. Just about a month away, buddy.
It always sneaks up on me every single year, and this year's no different. I was just thinking about this the other day that, you know, we're sitting here July 21st. The Cincinnati events, the live Cincinnati events, we are a month away, right? I mean, when is that happening, and how many spots are still available in Cincinnati?
It's August 20th. We opened up another 12-man division, which seems like small potatoes when we begin to talk about what our drafters are familiar with at the FFPC. But for us, it has been a form of growth. We'll have at least 60 teams draft in Cincinnati this year, and it's very interesting. We're doing well in the surrounding states. As far as residents of Cincinnati, we're doing okay, but our growth has mostly come from players north into Michigan, into Pennsylvania, who are coming down to draft. So it's a good time. It's a different time. It's a smaller room, but we have a blast. And guys come, and Balky, they won't leave. We have some guys drafting 4 teams that day.
Yeah, I know it's Cincinnati. You know, Travis Cox, who is a longtime Kentucky player with his father, Jamie. You know, he and I talked, and he said, listen, you guys got to come to Cincinnati. It is so much fun every single year. And if it wasn't for friggin' work with drafts just crushing me that weekend, I definitely would be down because it is so much fun. Louisville, I got to tell you, and listen, you don't have to twist my arm on this show to get me to talk about how much fun I have in Louisville every single year for the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship live stuff. It is awesome. It's a blast. There are still spots available, I believe, according to the podcast last night, a couple of big payback spots still available Sunday morning and some main event spots still available as well.
The main event's wide open and will continue to be right up until a week before the draft. You know, we try to accommodate everyone and not really have a deadline on the event. We try to get everyone in there that can make a decision to come 25th through 27th at the Horseshoe, Indiana. But Balky, you know, our ancillaries are filling up very, very fast. There's good payout ratios in those. There's a lot of fun. Great competition. Adding the second big payback, our $1,000 entry league, on Sunday, Dave Gerzak and company, all our team from Wisconsin will be drafting twice that day. Danny Mueller's drafting twice. A number of guys are hitting it twice. Hakey is hitting it twice. But other guys will play just one, and we're going to fill 2 of them. We got 2 spots left. I'm making a reach out to our good friend Chad Schroeder. He promised me he was coming. I haven't heard from him yet. I'm counting on him to listen to tonight's show and join us.
Yeah, definitely. Chad would be a great get for that, and a lot of fun to draft against if you do. Or if you are competing out there. KFFSC.com, by the way, is where to go to register for these events. And listen, I'll be there live. It's a lot of fun, and I'd love to pick anyone's brain that will let me, because clearly that overall title in Kentucky still escapes me year after year. And actually, Farrell, too, I should bring this up, the tie-in here. Not only do you get a healthy cash prize for winning the overall title, but 10 spots, the top 10 finishers, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Kentucky main event will actually get an FFPC main event team the following year.
Oh, you've got a little rich for us, Balky. The board of directors are now just grinding it out because you've caused some confusion with them. It's the top 5, but the top 10 collects
okay.
money, but the top 5 grab that desirable FFPC bid. Our good friend Rick Ross will be one of those guys coming to Las Vegas to draft live this year. Rick finished in our top 5. Some of the guys will play online, but we've got a good mix that'll make a rush to try to win the big prize at the FFPC this year because of their 2016 top 5 finish, putting them in the FFPC.
Yeah, definitely be an awesome story if one of the Kentucky players can take down the main event in Vegas at Planet Hollywood. So KFFFC.com, check that out. Make sure that you're registering for your teams there. I want to thank Football Guys, Roto World, and Rob for tonight's rundown, Farrell. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport is reporting that wide receiver Mike Williams not expected to need surgery. Apparently, a month ago, the Chargers are actually considering season-ending surgery for Mike Williams. Multiple sources telling Rappaport that it is no longer on the table or no longer a possibility. Williams has apparently been reportedly getting quite a bit better, getting healthier since that injury in May. And actually, when training camp opens, he'll be there, but he's probably going to be on the PUP list. I don't think I need another reason not to draft Mike Williams, but this is just the icing on the cake. What does this do to Keenan Allen, Tyrell Williams, and the aforementioned in the first hour, Antonio Gates and Hunter Henry's draft value for you?
Yeah, it keeps them about where they are because I think everyone has just made the decision exactly like you have. And this kid makes a late-round draft flyer in best ball leagues, but I think I'll leave him alone in the redraft leagues. Balky is, he's an exciting rookie ball player that I think we'll be talking more about in 2018.
This is maybe opening the door for your one of your favorite players from last year, Travis Benjamin. Maybe he gets a big role in the offense this year.
When he was healthy, he was good. And I liked him a great deal just based on where you could get him. A piece of that receiving core is always an interesting thing, but, with the advance of Tyrell Williams in that offense, and they like to get Inman some play, the elevation of the younger tight end, I think it's best that Benjamin be a late-round flyer, too. I liked him a little earlier in the draft last year.
Over to the right back in my backyard, the Wisconsin State Journal has a report that Packers running back coach Ben Sirmon stated fourth-round running back Jamal Williams will actually open up camp as the backup running back to Ty Montgomery. The number 2 job kind of was, it's still kind of up in the air. We're talking about what a coach is saying in July. But you look at Jamal Williams getting ahead of the depth chart in front of 5th-rounder Aaron Jones, 7th-rounder Devontae Mays, apparently not a sort of an afterthought right now. But you look at Jamal Williams going in the 12th round of drafts, Farrell. This is a guy I believe that you actually liked in the pre-draft process. He goes to an elite offense in the NFL. Jamal Williams kind of makes some sense in the 12th round, even if you don't draft Montgomery.
I think so, too. And this is one of the coveted number 2 running back positions because we just don't know how much time Montgomery's going to run the ball when the Packers have better choices than they've had in the past. Jamal Williams, a player that, I like him on the field. I got to know him a little bit at the Senior Bowl, so I like him even better as a guy. And I think he's going to do very, very well. But now I like the other rookie running backs there. Aaron Jones, the kid out of UTEP, had a lot of utility in college, and I was very impressed with him. Derek May out of Utah State was a late-round draft pick for them, but it doesn't matter in running backs where you're drafted anymore in the NFL. This player could, I think he checks in the neighborhood of 240 pounds, so he could be a real pounder down around the goal line. We could see a different look. There's no team in football, as far as the running game is concerned, that you need to take a closer look at training camp. Packers preseason schedule: Eagles, Foreskins, Broncos, Rams. Pay attention to that Broncos game, third one of the year. You know that the Packers are going to be on TV in the preseason. Watch them and try to understand what they're doing. Williams is the leader in the clubhouse, as they say in the world of golf, but we got a lot of preseason football to determine who's going to get the carries there behind Montgomery and who may eclipse him as basically a 50-50 split.
Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Commissioner Farrell Elliott joining the show tonight. And Farrell, I want to expound on that a little bit. We have about roughly a minute or so before the break, but talk about that Jamal Williams. Maybe the conversation shouldn't be Jamal Williams versus Aaron Jones. Maybe the real conversation that we're going to be talking about after the season starts is Jamal Williams versus Ty Montgomery. What are the chances that Williams actually turns this into a 50-50 split with Montgomery before we hit October, or maybe before we hit November at least, to give him more of a fair shot? What are the chances of that happening?
I think they're strong, and Montgomery could easily stay on the field with Williams. Montgomery moves to the slot out of the backfield, becomes a much more interesting, much more dangerous alignment of players as they move the ball around and position players differently on the field. It really shouldn't hurt Montgomery's draft position because he can do just as much catching the ball as he can do running it. Montgomery's an interesting player because of what Williams brings to the team.
Farrell Elliott, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Commish, bringing it strong tonight, which we always appreciate. We have to get to a break. We're going to get to much, much more, including your emails right after this. You're listening to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Eric Balkman and Commissioner Farrell Elliott of the KFFSC. Make sure you're getting your teams at kffsc.com. Here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Farrell, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, sitting in for Dave Gerzak. We talked a little bit with Jeff Howle in the first hour of the program tonight, who talked about his affinity for Danny Woodhead, a guy who he really has historically liked in fantasy. And I'll tell you, a guy that's liking him this year is Joe Flacco, saying that really ever since we lost Ray Rice, this is a direct quote from Flacco, we haven't had a type of back that's quite like Ray was and quite like how Danny is in the passing game. They just have a very good feel for when they're open and how to get open, how to sit in holes, how to find my eyes, and you can already see that. So this is very effusive praise that the guy who is throwing the football to Woodhead is giving him. Farrell, there's a lot to like about Danny Woodhead. I won't bore everybody else with my feelings on him because I already shared that in the first hour. But your thoughts on Danny Woodhead, who is going at the 703 of FFPC drafts right now?
All of us really love Woodhead, and he still ends up going in the late 6th and early 7th, and I don't understand it. He should move up the board. He should be a 5th-round pick. So at the 7th-round picks, you're getting great value for your position there, even in the 6th round. Try to get this player, especially at this point of the season, on every team you can. He's going to get most of it for the first 4 games because of Dixon's unfortunate suspension, and he's not going to cede the field and those opportunities to Dixon once Dixon returns. And Woodhead is very underrated in the goal line situation. San Diego used him with mixed results. Better play calling and game script mix from the Baltimore coaching staff will lead Woodhead to be a better player in the red zone than he was at San Diego. You should get in business with Danny Woodhead.
Yeah, definitely. He's a guy that I want to be in business with this year, and really, honestly, every year. We always talk about being the bag holder in Dynasty. Like you end up, holding this guy year after year after year after year, and every year everybody thinks he's going to fall off the face of the earth, and every year he doesn't until that year he does. Hines Ward was exactly like that. He was left for dead, and then he had another, 3 or 4 great years. Frank Gore is the epitome of this. Every year everybody thinks he's going to go down and get hurt, and every year he churns out borderline RB1 production, and this is just another case of it. I will continue to hold Danny Woodhead in any PPR Dynasty League I'm in, and finally when he is done, he's done, and I'll be fine with that. But at least I got all these years of production from him, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. Last thing I want to get to before we get into listener emails here, Farrell, something came across the wire this week that I thought was worth pointing out as far as the Cardinals running back situation goes. Adam Schefter reporting that Arizona has indeed re-signed Chris Johnson to a 1-year deal. So Chris Johnson joins a backfield there with Andre Ellington, with Kerwin Williams. It's kind of a mess as far as what you're looking at for David Johnson's handcuff. Farrell, if you have the first overall pick and you decide to use that pick on David Johnson, are you looking at any of these guys as a handcuff, or do you view this as a total committee approach with nobody holding value if Johnson, knock on wood, does go down?
Right. In this situation, there's no handcuff for David Johnson. Everyone knows that. And, yes, it would be a committee. And I can't stress how much I dislike the concept of handcuffing. And this is the least valuable handcuff situation in all the league. So that's about all I can say about that. Glad to see Chris Johnson still stays in the league, but that's essentially that.
We have we have to get to fantasy feedback here, but we do have an email about handcuffing, and I definitely want to pick your brain about that. Rob, go ahead and give the intro.
If you've got got a question for Eric Dave or tonight's guest, send them a tweet at HSFF Hour on Twitter. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Post it in the chat room during the broadcast. Hashtag your tweet with HSFF or just smack Eric in the head. That's highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com or at HSFF Hour on Twitter.
First email, we were just talking about running backs, and Farrell, you brought up the Denver running back situation earlier. But this email from Joe in Los Angeles writes, "Hello, Farrell and Balky. I've been grabbing Devontae Booker in a bunch of my FFPC best balls this year in the 14th round. Am I making a big mistake investing in the number 3 running back in Denver, or is this a good shark move? Thanks, guys." That is Joe in Los Angeles. Farrell, your thoughts on Devontae Booker, and you can expand upon this as to how you view the Denver running game as a whole and what you think about Anderson and Charles as well.
Hey, Joe in L.A. Interestingly enough, it's neither. It's not a great sharp decision, and it's not a bad decision. We just don't know. He has so much ahead of him, and so many things on paper must go wrong. You know, he was given the opportunity last year. As old Casey Stengel says, you can look it up. He didn't do very well with it. 175 carries, 3.67 yards per carry, I believe. There was I read somewhere where we've talked often about this, and we always talk to rookie players about this. Mentally, even before physically, you hit the wall in the NFL, and this kid hit the wall. You look at the last 5 or 6 weeks of last year, he was dreadful. Probably in early December, I remember a game, he had close to 20 carries and less than 40 yards against that defense of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was better. That day they were great because there was no running room for this player. So, yes, he is a flyer. He is an interesting player. There's a lot of other running backs on a 20-man or even a 28-man best ball roster that I would want to get involved with. So I wouldn't want to invest in him in my multiple teams that I'm playing, Joe. If you got him a couple places, maybe in the future you look somewhere else.
Farrell, do you think Jamal Charles makes the team this year in Denver? I mean, does he end up being that change of pace guy, or are his knees just going to betray him again?
I don't know until I see him play, Balky. I've got to see him move, and I don't have to look at him more than once or twice to see him move to see if he still has it. And I know in Denver, you know, they've offered him a contract, so somebody out there has watched him and feels that he still has what has separated him from lots of other running backs is that great cutback ability. And you know, you can tell that very quickly if he still has it. If you want to understand what it looks like to have the great ability and how that ability can leave a player, the aforementioned Chris Johnson, look at him early in his career and look at him now. And, you know, Chris Johnson can make a team, Jamal Charles can make a team. But Jamal Charles is likely not going to be, with the injury history he's had, is not likely going to be anything like he was. However, he doesn't have to be like he was to be effective for the Broncos, but he has to be like he was to win you a fantasy championship.
Little conversation is piped up in the chat room here tonight. Jay Berg, our good friend, FFPC player, asks, is Spencer Ware a good running back? And Kern Reeve says, I only take him when he's confident he can get Kareem Hunt as well. And he's been doing pretty well, hitting about 900 in getting both Hunt and Ware this year. Farrell, as we look at the ADP for Kareem Hunt going at the 805, and right now Spencer Ware is actually going at the 506. How do you view the Chiefs running back situation? Would you be grabbing either of those guys on any of your rosters this year at those prices?
I think if you're targeting those, and hello, Hud, how are you doing? I think if you're targeting those guys, you know, if you go to Las Vegas to play in the FFPC, I know where to find you because you'll be at the roulette wheel because you like to gamble, and you really don't want a sure thing in gambling. You want to play roulette where the odds are really against you to begin with. But I don't want to get involved in that situation with that offense at those numbers, 5 and 8.
Yeah, it's a significant investment in both of those players when you talk about a Chiefs offense that's sort of in flux. I mean, the GM is different. They drafted Mahomes. This could be Alex Smith's last year. Tyreek Hill's been elevated to the number 1 receiver. Jeremy Maclin is gone. So there's been a lot of changes on that offense. It'll be certainly, along with the Denver running game, something to follow in the preseason action as we take in those games. Next email is from Jim in Tifton, Georgia. He writes, "Dear Cheese and Bourbon," I'm assuming I'm Cheese and Farrell is Bourbon, "with how poorly the tight ends as a whole performed in 2016, is it now more important than ever to get an elite tight end in the FFPC?" Thank you, Jim, for that email. What do you think, Farrell? Tight ends, historically, were not very good last year as a whole. Are you trying to make sure that you get an elite one, a top 3, a top 4 option in FFPC drafts this year?
No, you're not. Unless you get into a place where you're completely confused and don't like any of the players that are around your mix in the 3rd round, you've got to stay away from these tight ends. The best one to choose of the elite, and I assume when we talk elite, we're talking Gronkowski, Olsen, Reed, Kelsey, and Graham. Would those be the elite tight ends?
Yep.
And you know, I'm gonna look at Kelsey. You know, that's going to be my guy. And if I can get him, in the 3rd round, and some of the guys I've been targeting have gone away, I'll still go for him. But I think this is the golden age of tight ends. And I would argue about the tight end performance. Zach Ertz and Kyle Rudolph came into their own last year. They had big years. Martellus Bennett was paid for a reason and should be prolific with this team. And, you know, if we're going to play roulette with Hudson Kern-Reeves while we're out in Las Vegas, let's play roulette with O.J. Howard and at Tampa and Ingram at New York and even the kid at Cleveland. I pronounce his name better when I'm looking at it. Is it Njoku? Is that the correct pronunciation, Balky? And, you know, these players, those guys are worth gambling on. So I see it less when you're dealing with Gronkowski, Reed, you're dealing with the situation of the injury. You know, if Gronkowski plays 16 games, you made a smart decision and drafted him. But I don't think it's necessary. And, you know, I look at it, Travis Kelce, 6'6", 260-pound, cost $85 balls last year.
I hate to cut you off, but we do have to get to a break.
Okay, let's break.
The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour returns. Eric Balkman, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, I sincerely apologize because you're going off on a mellifluous, beautiful tight end analysis before we had to get to break. But we're talking about these elite tight ends, and one of the things that actually popped into my mind when you were answering this question from the emailer, Dave Gerzak, of course, the co-host of this show, many a times, not even in an FFPC format, but he'll go into Kentucky or he'll go into like these private leagues or what have you, and he'll actually avoid, you know, the top 8, 9, sometimes 10 tight ends, but then pound not 2 but 3 tight ends sort of in the middle of the draft. Mm-hmm. And so that way he knows that not all 3 of them are going to hit, and he can dump one if he needs to. But, you know, you'd think that you can hit on 1 or 2 of those guys. Even if you just hit on 1, it might end up being an all right strategy. So I'm kind of with you. I don't think you have to sell out and try to get these uber tight ends. I know when I've done it in the past, I kind of regret taking Olsen early or Reed early or sometimes Gronk early because I'm like, man, I could have gotten a running back or receiver there and then waited and got, you know, one of these other tight ends that sure didn't put up those same numbers but put up something close, and I paid a lot less for him. So I think there's that strategy to consider as well.
Yeah, last year, Kelsey, as much as I love him, he and Rudolph caught the same number of passes.
It just, I mean, the thing is, it's like, I've done it both ways. You know, I used to just kind of, and I don't play in, you know, it's so stupid that I actually host this podcast about a tight end premium format, and I've never played in one before. I mean, I guess I have played in some before, but I don't regularly play in them. I've done the whole, okay, I'm going to just kind of ignore tight end and, you know, I'll just grab 1 or 2 later on and see it. And then that strategy just kind of ticks me off. So then I switch back to I got to get the elite guy, and now I think I'm the opposite way. It's just like I can never get it right. And I think this year I probably will not get too many elite tight ends, and I'll just take my chances with what I can get in the mid-rounds.
I think you might be rewarded, Balky.
Well, let's talk about Kelvin Benjamin, because people who drafted him last year were not rewarded. What are your thoughts on Kelvin Benjamin this year, now that he has lost his fast food weight from the off-season TIA that is Bruce in Pompano Beach, Florida? Kelvin Benjamin Farrell is going at the 704 in Football Guys drafts right now. Your thoughts on him potentially getting back to his rookie year numbers?
That's where I want him. I would prefer him at 8. I've seen him at 8 in the limited drafting I've done. I don't want to pay any more than that, but at that point, he's of value to me. Even if his numbers don't really improve, he still caught 61 balls last year. Say he gets 70 and 5 to 8 touchdowns. That's exactly what you would want from a number 4 receiver, which is exactly where he's being drafted.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, I don't want to talk about, you are taking a risk in the 7th round. I mean, if it doesn't pan out, that's a 7th round pick that you're missing on. But it's a lot better I'm missing a 7th round pick than a 3rd or 4th round. Let's go to John in Rochester, Minnesota. Joined my first best ball draft ever today. Any advice for me? I'm used to drafting in 12-team 20-rounders. Best ball's obviously 28 rounds. You are looking at no waivers throughout the season. You don't have to worry about setting your lineup because the system automatically does it. Farrell, how does your strategy change? Is there anything that you would tell a person who's never done one of these before to make sure that they are taking advantage of, or making sure they're not falling into a certain trap?
Yes. Be sure you don't get into a draft with Brad Cruz, Joe Jefferson, the young lady from Texas, I forget her name. She's a wonderful player in this format. There's some really good players in this format, and what I've seen them do is build their roster around X of number of players, 3 to 4 quarterbacks, at least 3 kickers, which means you have to go early to get one. Don't speculate, but you can speculate some and be rewarded. Don't get a core group of players early that you can count on for consistency. Consistency naturally is hard to predict, but players that sometime, John Brown would be one. You spoke of him earlier. There's a player with prolific blow-up aspects to his game, the big play. But you don't want a roster full of big play players. You're going to need a Jarvis Landry or an Edelman in there. And so it changes a little bit, and don't get caught in runs. If you see that 5 or 6 of the last 8 or 9 draft picks have been quarterback, don't try to buck the run, because when it comes back to you, there might not be enough guys left to fill out 3 quarterbacks, which is what you need to be competitive.
What about 3 quarterbacks to be competitive for sure? Are you also taking 3 kickers, 3 defenses as well?
I'm going to try to get 3 kickers. I think statistically it's been proven that 3 kickers will get you more over a season than 1 elite kicker and 1 other guy. Now, not everybody's going to have 3 kickers. It's not possible. So you've got to get some kickers also that you can count on throughout the roster or throughout the season. So having a guy that kicks indoors or kicks in a southern locale is a benefit, as opposed to having a Buffalo or sometimes even a New England kicker.
Except for my boy Mason Crosby, who is just the man in Green Bay.
Mason Crosby. He had a bad year in 2015, at least from the way the ball was flying off his foot, and I got off of him. In 2016, he was golden.
Yeah, he was awesome. The Packers fans up here had turned on Crosby, to a large extent as well. And the team didn't. The Packers were rewarded with a great season from Crosby last year. Let's take an email here. This is read an email. Will in Buffalo, New York. Dear dudes, what's your opinion on Tevin Coleman this year? His draft value is really starting to remind me of Larry Johnson, Ben Tate, and Derrick Henry as far as handcuffs that really see their ADP soar. That is Will in Buffalo, New York. Tevin Coleman going at the 609 currently, Farrell. You already talked about your disdain for handcuffing, but these are guys that are not necessarily being drafted as handcuffs. They're being drafted as potential, game-changing starting running backs, and they're the backups on their team. When we talk about, he mentioned Johnson, Tate, and Henry. You look at Tevin Coleman this year. Are you willing to sink a sixth-round pick into a guy who is going to be playing behind Devontae Freeman? We think.
Yes, I am, and I'll tell you exactly why. I don't think this is Freeman's backup. I think Coleman ends up being the back here. If you look at the new offensive coordinator, Sarkisian, Coach Sark has had a history of a power blocking scheme, not a zone blocking scheme. And what that means for the Atlanta Falcons running backs is they're going to have less of that outside or trying to hit the number 3 gap and cut back. You're going straight ahead running. Coleman's physically is more designed for that. They're also going to run a lot more out of the shotgun this year, and the team did not do well rushing the ball out of the shotgun last year. You're going to see the Falcons trying to execute differently, and I can say that with confidence because I know one thing about NFL coaches. They want to win in the way that they want to win. They want to force their system and apply their direction to the football team. And even though this team is one of the, even though Freeman and Coleman to a lesser extent are great cutback runners that can benefit from zone blocking, you're going to coach a completely different system, and you're going to run the ball much, much differently at Atlanta. This offense is going to look much different than what it's looked in the past. And Coleman, if it works out the way it should, he has the physical skills to respond to that scheme, and he will be a steal at the 6th and 7th round.
Yeah, it's a great point about, Shanahan not being there and Sarkisian taking over. I think that's not talked about enough. And Coleman makes sense in the 6th round as not a Freeman backup, but maybe a standalone running back. He makes a lot of sense there. I was just reading this next email here. And Farrell, I was still listening to you, just so you're aware. I was reading this next email here. I think I'll just read it here. It's I'm having a hard time determining how I feel about Jarvis Landry. Maybe you guys could play a Would You Rather with him so I know what not to do with him. That is Tony in Westland, Michigan. P.S. Just kidding. You guys are the best. I think we did play a Would You Rather with Jarvis Landry recently on the show, but I know you weren't on, Farrell. So I figure, and Rob, don't play it because we're short on time, but I figure you could play a Jarvis Landry. So we'll do a Would You Rather with Jarvis Landry with you, and I'll just ask you, would you rather have, let's see, where do I want to start this off? We'll go rapid fire on this. Would you rather have this year Jarvis Landry or Golden Tate?
Tate.
Jarvis Landry or Alshon Jeffrey?
Jeffrey.
Jarvis Landry or Devontae Adams?
Adams.
Jarvis Landry or Larry Fitzgerald?
Landry.
And last one, Jarvis Landry or Tyreek Hill?
Oh, that's a tough one because I do love Tyreek Hill's possibilities of what he can do when he gets the ball. I think if I'm swinging for the fences, I want to go for Tyreek Hill.
All right, I lied. Last one because this will be the official last one since this is a Raider. Jarvis Landry or Michael Crabtree?
Oh, you got to go Crabtree, brother. Even with his fumbling lack of catching ability towards the end of the season, you've got to love those mid-80s catches and his end zone prowess, especially with number 18 Holmes finally getting the job somewhere else. I think Buffalo.
Okay, and Farrell, we're coming up on a break here, so I want you to go rapid fire on this email here, and I'm going to bring you back for one more question after the break. Hey guys, guns to your heads, who has the better rookie year, Leonard Fournette or Christian McCaffrey? That's Miles in Long Island City, New York. Which one you got, Fournette or McCaffrey this year, Farrell?
No contest, Fournette all day long.
Fournette all day long. I think I'm with you on that. I think it's weird, but I think I am a Fournette guy over McCaffrey. We're going to talk more about the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship right after this. This is our final break. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I am Eric Balkman. Co-hosting tonight, my second co-host, Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. And Farrell, final email I want to get to tonight. This is a fun one. Hello, Farrell, of all the, and it's specifically addressed to you, too. Hello, Farrell, of all the years you've been doing the KFFSC, what's the craziest thing you've seen happen at the event? Thank you. That is George in, I can't even read it, Atoka, Oklahoma, I think, somewhere in Oklahoma. So thank you for the email, George. But Farrell, what's the most memorable experience that you can think of, or what comes to mind in hosting the KFFSC year after year?
Oh man, it's the most memorable experience. Well, one of them was when I looked up and the boys from Wisconsin walked into the door. That was big. That was big ego. When they walked through the door and came in, you know, we had guys coming from a long way away. I knew we were doing something right. We've had some very, very good times, and it would probably be more interesting to ask the players their memories of it. You know, my memory is trying to make sure I got 12 players in each division, that I've got enough draft boards, that they're serving hot cheeseburgers. You know, that there's that everybody's getting enough beer, and that everything is running as smoothly. So my job is a little different there. I think there's been just coming and seeing that people arrive. We've got an interesting mix of people. We've got a lot of smart guys in the room and women. We've got most of them, if not all of them, are unpretentious, easy to get along with. And one of the greatest compliments we get, Balky, I guess what makes me feel best about it, is people get there on Friday, they stay all weekend, they draft multiple leagues, and they hate the idea that they got to leave. You know, lots of times people go away for a weekend, and by Sunday they're ready to get the hell home. But we have guys that are reluctant to leave. They're a little melancholy when it all comes to end. So it hasn't been necessarily one thing that's happened, but you know, hearing bits and pieces of stories of things that some of you guys get into, both in and out of the casino. I do remember our great friend Ron Meyer, who somehow got lured into the casino and stayed most of the evening, and then had a 10 a.m. draft, and walked from the casino to the draft in the same clothes on Sunday morning that he had been wearing on Saturday. And so, you know, I don't think he saw his room much that weekend. He walked into the room bleary-eyed, took a shot of coffee with perhaps a little certain type of energy drink special to Kentucky in it, and then drafted a team that won that division. So, you know, that's a good memory of it, but I got so many of them that it's hard just to talk about one.
Well, listen, man, we're going to swap stories once again when we get down there. KFFSC.com is where to go. Play live, play online. Just play the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. I'm up against it, man, but it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. We'll talk again soon.
Anytime, Balky. Thank you.
Farrell Elliott of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Check it out. It is a lot of fun. Go to KFFSC.com and register for your teams and play online. You don't have to go there, but it is so much more fun there. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our show. I want to thank Jeff Howle. I want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, all of you. Get your draft spot early. Pay off your main event team by Monday, so you can make sure that you're getting that by the end of July. We will be back on Sunday for Pros vs. Joe's Fat Stacks Draft #1 live at 8/7 Central. Nelson Sousa, Jake Seeley, Corey Parson, Chris Holland, many more. Mike Blewett, George Kurtz, and the Roto Expert Show up next on Fantasy. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Him again, the sound the engine in is like a bird. You see fireworks and Corvette tires skirt the boulevard. I know how you work, I know just who you are. See, use a bitch, your hormones probably switch inside your DNA.
Staples knows that when your printer jams more than it prints, it's time. When your paper supply is in desperate need of resupply, it's time. When the only printer in your office that's not out of ink is 3 flights up, it's definitely time. And it's times like these when pros turn to Staples. Staples has great prices on everything you need to print. And now, buy 1 HP ink, get the second 30% off. Staples. It's pro time. Ends 7/22/17. See store or staples.com for details. Restrictions may apply.
Do you have college credits or an associate's degree? At Rasmussen College, we think that experience should count toward your bachelor's program. That's why we made transferring credits simple and even offer some courses that let you finish faster if you already know the material. The result? You can enroll in one of 9 accelerated business programs for under $8,500 a year. Learn how the experience you already have can take you further at rasmussen.edu. Price reflects total full-time cost, including fees. See rasmussen.edu/tuition for complete cost details.